Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Art Like Everything Else, the podcast. My name is Simone. I'm your host, and this week we will be exploring Afrofuturism in art. So, for those who might not be up to speed or need a bit of a refresher, the most common understanding of Afrofuturism is it as a cultural aesthetic that combines science fiction, history, and fantasy to explore the African American experience. And it aims to connect those from the Black diaspora with their forgotten African ancestry. So this is the definition I will be using to explore the works of art in today's episode. But I do want you to let me know about any Afrofuturistic works of art that you love or would highly recommend in the comments. I'm a really big fan of Afrofuturism, and so honestly, I love both of the projects that we are working with for today's episode. But yeah, I'm just a really big fan of Afrofuturism, and I love to check out any recommendations you might have. Please put them in the comments below. I'll be looking forward to it. With that being said, let's get started. Alright, so our first work of art is from hip-hop duo Outkast. Outkast is a southern hip-hop duo from Atlanta, Georgia. This hip-hop duo, well, technically College Park. I don't want to hurt anybody feeling from Atlanta if they don't want to say they really from Atlanta. But this hip-hop duo, they were formed in 1992, and it consisted of Andre Benjamin, who went by the stage name Andre 3000. It was Dre at first, but he later changed it to Andre 3000, and then Antoine Patton, who went by the stage name Big Boy. The album we're going to be talking about today is their sophomore album, ATLiens. Yeah. So that project was released in 1996. It has 15 tracks. So this 15-track project started with an intro that sets us up for the album. So track 1, You May Die, parentheses intro. It starts with the Catholic prayer in Portuguese, and then the lyrics that kind of tell us to keep trying, to keep going forward until summer. So instead of going track by track like I've done before, I actually want to talk instead about the journey of the album. So after the intro of the album, we actually jump into the sci-fi nature of this project with the new tracks, with the next few tracks after the intro kind of exploring the themes of being extraterrestrial and not of this world. Andre 3000 and Big Boy, they go on to kind of detail their experiences of being from Atlanta or from Georgia. I'm gonna just say from Georgia, and what that kind of sort of entails, and what their realities look like as a result. They discuss their past, they discuss the future and what is to come of the future, what they would like to see in the future, and the issues believed to have been plagued or harmed the people kind of at the time. The use of aliens and extraterrestrial themes to tell the stories of the past and the future, and to explore the Black American experience, is a great reflection of the Afrofuturism that we are talking about. And that is not unlike our next work of art. Our next work of art is from singer, rapper, and actor Janelle Monae. Janelle Monae is an R&B and hip hop, and really more, honestly. They dabble in funk, they dabble in all kinds of sounds. But this artist, they debuted with their first album in 2010. The work we're going to be exploring for today, though, is their Dirty Computer visual album that was released in 2018. So this visual album follows Jane 57821, a dirty computer who has been captured by the New Dawn, this totalitarian regime that is set out to bend anyone who would defy or deviate from the status quo, which Jane 57821 definitely did. Now, when we see Jane, they are strapped in this bed and they're being forced to recite what the New Dawn tells them to. Well, we see these two, we then see it kind of pans over to two people in this room off to the side who are literally erasing Jane's memories. And it is over the course of these memories that we see Jane, this Black android, living their life under threat of a violent police state and having to exist almost in secret as the Black queer android that they are. Excuse me. But yeah, and so over the course of this album, we see Jane, who is played by Janelle, explore having a relationship with women and also coming to terms with being pansexual, as well as this desire to be able to just exist as they are. And over this time, Jane is actually faced with someone they were close with who got caught and had their memories erased or wiped. They're having to interact. And so Jane is having to interact with someone who they were once deeply in love with and had this really deep connection with. But that person doesn't even know who they are. It's really, really like kind of heartbreaking if you think about it. But yeah, we then go on to kind of explore and erase more of Jane's memories, and it is discovered that some of the memories aren't actually memories, making it so that Jane actually isn't like the other androids. Like they are capable of imagining and creating realities, even just in their head. Unfortunately, they do kind of erase all of Jane's memories, and we see Jane become the very same person that their previous partner was. I think they're called Mary Apples or something like that. And like they're helping, and Jane is now helping, as a Mary Apple, is now helping to remove the memories of their other partner. It was a cute throuple, y'all. And like, with side note, I will say I do think it's slick, kind of twisted for like this New Dawn establishment to do, because Che, who is the second partner of Jane, Zen is the actual name of the first partner, but it starts by going by like Mary Apple or something like that. But Che and Jane got caught at the same time. But what they did was like they erased all of Jane's memory, meaning they stored Che somewhere to then purposefully wake him up so that he would have to interact with Jane after all of Jane's memories got erased. Like, that's kind of messed up. Like, that's like psychologically kind of twisted and torturous to like force somebody to kind of interact with somebody who they had this deep love for, and then they don't get to actually meet them, or actually they are interacting with that same person who has no idea who they are. Like, that is not at all like, but then again, it's a totalitarian regime. I'm sure torture is their goal, most likely. But I do feel like that was definitely intentional and definitely twisted. Anyway, we do go after that. Sorry about the tangent. Anyway, we do go to see Jane with their memory gone. They're working on this partner when the previous partner, Zen, they return with gas masks. And then they put so they come back with 3 gas masks. So one for Zen, Jane, and Che. And then they put on the gas mask, and then they like set off like this gas across the entire compound. It knocks everybody out. The gas that they put is called called Nevermind. And it's kind of what was erasing their memories and like kind of putting Jane to sleep so that like they would erase their memories, stuff like that. And so yeah, all 3 of them then escape together. So the use of androids, as they are called, like in this film, they're called computers. This robot and tech-centric society to tell the stories of a Black queer character simply wanting to live their life by an unjust society is indeed also a great reflection of the Afrofuturism we have been doing and discussing up until this point. Afrofuturism was actually really, really heavy in both of these works, and in a different way for each project. So Outkast went the extraterrestrial route, which I thought was actually a really interesting route to go, especially as a hip-hop duo from the South. So like around this time, this was like their second studio album, and after their first studio album that kind of, I believe, released a year or 2 before then, it was kind of like the South didn't have too much of a leg, or a lot of like the East Coast, West Coast rappers, there wasn't a lot of respect for the Southern rappers. And it was kind of after this that, like, after Outkast kind of won, I believe in 1995, for their project, their first album, they kind of got that recognition and kind of was putting like Southern rap, helping with putting Southern rap on the map, essentially. And so as like Southern rap was starting to get bigger, and so going the route of talking about themselves as if they are telling people about a species or being that they didn't know, so like Southern living was something I thought was really cool. Because like honestly, despite the diaspora, I do believe that there are things we do in the South that people do think is otherworldly or weird. Because like, I'm from the South, and like there are definitely times where I'm talking to somebody who's not from the South, and I'm like, oh yeah, we do this and this, and I was like, what? But yeah, anyways, I thought it was really cool to kind of equate themselves to extraterrestrials that's not of this planet and not of this world. Janelle Monae, though, went the Android or computer route, which is really interesting as because they're failing to meet or live up to the expectations of the society they lived in was equated to being corrupted or dirty. So something I did find really interesting in the routes that all of these artists kind of went with when they were talking about their futurism routes, is that like I found it really interesting that both projects sort of leaned into Afro-pessimism a bit, not like in totality, but like I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but they both kind of leaned a bit into the Afro-pessimist type of atmosphere, I'd say. But for those who don't know what Afro-pessimism is, Afro-pessimism actually is like kind of like a philosophy that explores the anti-blackness of society, and it posits that blackness or black people themselves are seen as antithetical to humanity. So Outkast, with their project ATLiens, leaning into being aliens and not of this world, and then Janelle Monae kind of in their project, their Dirty Computer project, leaning into being an android or a computer. It was interesting to see because it showed that in their respective futures, none of them were actually human. Something else really cool, I thought both of these projects did a really good job of exploring the African American experience with the use of sci-fi and fantasy. Outkast explored what life was like in the inner cities of their hometowns, using songs like ATLiens and E.T. or Extraterrestrial, and singing lyrics like they alienate us because we're different, keep your head to the sky, and ATLiens, or I fallen when we was nappy-headed ninjas in the projects, but now they carjack, wait on income tax and unsafe sex, in E.T. or Extraterrestrial. They sort of kind of giving the idea of what it was actually like growing up there with some sci-fi like descriptions. Janelle Monae, on the other hand, kind of explored being different in America as a black queer femme computer. In the visual album, during songs like Django Jane and American, they discuss growing up in a struggling family and the injustices that exist in America with lyrics like, Mama was a G, she was cleaning hotels, Papa was a driver, I was working retail, kept us in the back of the store, we ain't hitting no more. In Django Jane, and then until women can get equal pay for equal work, or until black people can come home from a police stop without being shot in the head, this is not my America. Now, while in our working definition, we sort of started, we started with Afrofuturism. There was a mention of an heir to connect those from the black diaspora with their forgotten African ancestry. This was sort of present with Outkast. At least if you check out the music video for ATLiens, where Andre 3000 and Big Boy are sort of seen exploring an Egyptian pyramid. And I would say I do think that counts. The music video actually shows like hieroglyphs that would place Andre 3000 and Big Boy sort of like in the history of that place, and like kind of have them squarely set within that ancestry of being from Egypt in Africa. However, I will say I couldn't spot that specific thing in Janelle Monae's visual album. Now, Afrofuturism is so much more than black people in sci-fi. According to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, Afrofuturism expresses notions of black identity, agency, and freedom through art, creative works, and activism that envision liberated futures for black life. So that means it's not just artists who can be Afrofuturistic. By this definition, many of the activists and freedom fighters we know of today actually display Afrofuturism. Harriet Tubman practiced Afrofuturism. Martin Luther King Jr. practiced Afrofuturism. Malcolm X practiced Afrofuturism. You too can be Afrofuturistic. And it is in this definition of Afrofuturism that Janelle Monae's visual album also takes part. There is a desire for freedom and a liberated future for Black life, and even Black love that is discussed and shown in this project. Through the literal liberation of Jane 57821 and her partner from the New Dawn regime, and then just across the album that talk about being, there are songs where they're Jane or Janelle is kind of talking about being free and what it is like to be free and to be able to exist proudly in who they are. And yeah, so Afrofuturism and believing in a future with Black people is to an art like everything else. Alrighty, time for this week's awe moment. So the art for this week's awe moment is actually a cute little quote by Dika Augustin, and it goes a little something like this. But like rain, I fall, but like water, I flow. Like the sun, I'll shine. Everything takes time, and I'll be fine again. Now, I thought this was a beautiful quote, because especially it's important to kind of remember that you will be fine again. I know last week we talked about hope, and this week we're kind of talking about Afrofuturism, and I believe in a world where Black people exist happily and safely. It's going to require hope. It's going to require believing that you will be fine again. And that like rain, we fall, but like water, we flow, like the sun will shine. Everything takes time, and we will be fine again. I thought that was a really powerful quote, and I thought it went really well with this episode because it's important to just know that you will be fine again. It won't, like all things won't end here. But yeah, that's all I have for you for today's episode. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being, and have a good rest of your day. Twofold. Bye.